So we are going to talk about a fun topic, which is the cloud. So now let's ignore, I love the cloud, right? We are huge adopters, but let's put that aside, right, for a minute, and just consider that, I'm probably the world's biggest skeptic about the cloud, and I start the conversation by saying, cloud schmaud, right? It's just this warm, fuzzy buzzword that everybody talks about. Can you make it real, right? Can you make it real for me?
Well, Jay, that's not quite what you said you were going to do. Okay. All right. That's fine. I'm here under the hot lights, so I'll do the best I can. I would agree that cloud as a word is by its sheer nature, we've watched it evolve the last couple of years. I put a book out about 2.5 years ago now it's been, which is kind of scary, thinking about it on cloud sourcing. But I think you have to decompose it to its components for it to have clarity. It's sort of like flying over the earth at 80,000 feet. You see no people, you see no buildings. At that range, you have to really focus in. And the components, I think, are very, very compelling.
Now, how does it differ, from the old models that existed as their precursors, right? Is it just the new rebranding of the old, service bureau model or the old ASP model, or is it something more than that?
Yeah, there's a lot more, actually. At the underlying driver of cloud that actually is hard to see amongst all the services is really a move away from labor arbitrage, which has been the driver of outsourcing and services since its inception about 50 years ago. Fundamentally, in some form, it's been labor arbitrage. It's not the Indian way of the last 10 years. It's always been a differential of labor and labor efficiency. It's really a reflection of a move of true efficiencies driven by more efficient use of hardware and software and better cost allocation to the immediate use. I mean, it's a different driver, and now it's a very different buying behavior. The buying behavior that everyone in this room is really familiar with. I mean, we study it. The consultants drive it, which we drive. The buyers ask for it, and the providers want it in the traditional market, which is a very structured, slow roll, big contract, very complicated, slow buying process. And the cloud really is, whether you want to admit it or not, and if you don't admit it, it's bypassing everybody in the room, is about disintermediation of the old buy and sell process in a different way of buying. And it's stunning if you go to other events like Dreamforce and whatever and see the hundreds of software providers who are lined up to sell services to your client, your internal client, your shared services clients across the firm, or internal business unit leaders, and they're selling them services today, lots of it.
So now let me raise my virtual eyebrow and say, isn't that a problem? I mean, if if you've disintermediated buying power and you've given it to your end user, isn't there a problem about loss of control?
Oh, stunning! There is a emerging problem, because even if you go to, and I can think of one of the largest insurance companies in the U.S. that we were having a meeting with, and it was a cloud sourcing meeting. We were trying to do what consultants do. We'll sell most anything. We're trying to do consulting work, and we had the first meeting with the IT team only, and they talked about what they had for controls. And they went through long steps of showing us that their PCs don't have USB ports, they've got lockdown, they've got this, they've got all these different things. They're the most locked down, secure company in the world, and they're not doing any cloud. And then we met with the business users, brought them in about 2 days later, once the IT sort of got their act together, and it felt like, like just people just shouting, yeah, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And there was just all kinds of cloud going on. And the problem with that is that the client data they're so proud of they're protecting with their internal network was actually some of it was going to be stored out on the network, and there wasn't a plan. Now, you can make it secure, but you've got to know you're doing, and it needs, and the net message with that, the problem is having a strategy that fits as a part of your sourcing strategy that includes cloud providers, your network, can't forget the network, no cloud without network, and user behaviors. And you've got to have all three worked into a plan.
Now, so that leads me to an interesting segue, right? So my job really is governance, right? And this is, we've our approach. But how do you govern the cloud? Wait, for me, outsourcing is very easy, right? There's a set number of providers, manage them. Same thing in the IT world, set number of providers, manage them. But because of the sheer prevalence of, I can't stop an end user from using, well, I can, but hypothetically, if I couldn't do that, stop an end user from using a P card to go out and buy some computing from Amazon and throw stuff out there, right? It's a big problem for us, right? And give a small or large an organization, if you have a concern around this, how would you address it? How do you govern, the cloud providers in your organization?
Yeah, I think it's the first rule there is, and it goes back to a lot of things we've learned in the past, which is getting buy-in from the business users that they're part of a plan, number one, and you almost have to rely on the goodwill of the users of your internal business customers to be part of a plan. And if they're part of that plan, I believe you'll have less of that. I don't think you can absolutely outlaw it because it's so ubiquitous, and the sales forces of all these various cloud providers are geared to avoid us, okay? They're complete, they won't call anyone that's on this stage that's went by today. They're going to call directly into the CEO or the CFO and convince them that this one thing, that if they'll bring their data out on it, this one piece of software, and they're all like $9,850, for a big enterprise application. And it's intoxicating. Business users start buying them. And I think buy-in is the net.
So, that's interesting because, so you can control it to a certain extent. But then, as a bank, and I'll probably extend this across for most financial institutions, the biggest concern is your data, right? We are heavily regulated. Anytime, and I can tell you the way we tier our providers, including the cloud providers, is based on, simple 2x2, business criticality, data criticality, right? But, given the plethora, again, and the fact that your data, and this is secure data, it could be trading data, it could be, PII, SSN kind of data going out. How do you manage, the risk around that, right? Because if there's a data leakage from, actually I remember this, I'll give you two instances. One was, I think Amazon Web Services came down, I think it was maybe about a year ago, and it brought down all the other websites that are sitting on top of it, right? And on the other hand, you can have, a provider like, not Salesforce, but I'd probably say, one of these benefits, where you're making your donations, towards things like United Way. They have a lot of your information. Assume something like there's a leakage out there. That's reputational risk for, the buyer. How do you control that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you've got to work on security protocols, first off, that realizes that users are going to attempt to do that, and look for ways to lock it down with traditional methods, which is your internal security department. But again, I'll keep going back to buy-in and having a team that's part of a combined plan as actually a better defense. Because I'll keep going back to that over and over, because no matter how many security protocols you put in place, if there's not an understanding of why they can't do it, and if buying cloud services is so hard that they can't do it, so they can never, it's always being held back, it's so intoxicating, it's hard to avoid the temptation without both knowledge of why you don't want them to do it that way, and then two, access to it on a reasonable basis.
So, why do you think that adoption is so slow? I can give you an example from our end, right? So we virtualize almost all our applications, which
right. You actually have done a lot, in spite of what you said.
So in fact, I found a cool provider on my iPad who I can actually go in and, there's a provider called, I think it's called CloudOn. They got this whole virtualized Microsoft Office. So I can just go in, I can use my iPad to do Office.
Right.
Now, if given all that's possible, why is the adoption still so low, right? We all talk about it, but why is the adoption still limited?
For cloud services? I think it's still a matter of localization. I think it's going to be a little bit like BPO, that it's going to be very regional driven. And a lot of the cloud providers are still trying to put out global footprints. There is a whole wave, though, of smaller cloud providers, particularly hung off the Salesforce environment. There's 1,785 applications that are Salesforce native now, that are different companies that are sold. So a lot of options.
Cool. Well, I think they were about out of time, but
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.